Good evening, and welcome to Voices of Hope's Virtual Evening of Hope 2020. I'm Brad Drazen, and I'm honored to be your host for this very special evening. Tonight, we will celebrate Voices of Hope's many accomplishments throughout the year, as well as highlight the incredible impact this passionate organization has had on so many across the state of Connecticut. Tonight's program will feature Voices of Hope staff and board members, Connecticut teachers, students, local survivors of the Holocaust, their children, and community members who have all taken part in the tremendous effort to promote love, tolerance, and empathy. This program is meant to be a unique illustration of our individual power to create positive change. Now we turn to Voices of Hope's president, Peter Fishman, to formally welcome you to tonight's event.
Good evening and welcome to our virtual Evening of Hope. My name is Peter Fishman and I am the proud president of Voices of Hope. It is my pleasure to welcome you to this exciting and unique event. While we wish we were meeting with you in person to celebrate our year's work, we are so happy to see so many of you here tonight in support of our mission. These are indeed difficult times for all of us, and I only hope that you and your families are healthy and safe. The international pandemic has altered all of our lives and has shifted us into a virtual world most of us were not prepared for. That being said, Voices of Hope has worked tirelessly to find new ways of connecting with students, educators, and communities near and far. On behalf of the Voices of Hope Board and all of those we have connected with this year, I extend our deepest thanks to our professional staff. Kathy, Kim, and Robin, thank you for going above and beyond to make this event and so many others possible this year. You each embody our mission in your ways and have made this transition to a virtual world a seamless one. Voices of Hope is a 501c3 educational nonprofit organization specializing in Holocaust and genocide programming. Founded by descendants of Holocaust survivors, we provide high-quality educational and commemorative programming throughout the year. Most importantly, we create meaningful and personal connections to the Holocaust and other genocides in hope that future generations build a better, kinder world, and of course, to ensure they never forget. Throughout this evening, you will learn more about the tremendous opportunities Voices of Hope offers its communities, as well as its impact on students and educators. Our hope tonight is that you will pledge to help us carry out our mission, which is to promote a culture of courage, to stand up against hatred through Holocaust and genocide education and remembrance. Please enjoy this short video, which will tell you a little more about who we are, what we do, and why our work is so important. Now more than ever, Voices of Hope needs your support. We thank you for joining us tonight, and we hope that tonight's program will help you raise your voice.
Hi, my name is Kathy Fishman, and I'm the Executive Director of Voices of Hope. When I look back at what Voices of Hope was like when I started in 2012 and where we are today, it amazes me. Our small group of individuals who gathered in various living rooms across the state has matured into an independent educational nonprofit organization thanks to a dedicated board, volunteers, constituents, educators, and donors. We wouldn't be where we are today without all of you. Voices of Hope organizes and hosts several commemorative events each year, but since its inception has taken on a much more significant role over the years. Through programs like our Descendants of the Shoah Conference, Speak Up, our mini course for descendants, and our docent volunteer program through our Holocaust Education Resource and Outreach Center, or HERO Center, Voices of Hope educates descendants of survivors to shoulder the responsibility of sharing their history for a time when there are no more living eyewitnesses. Following its efforts to pass the mandate in Connecticut requiring Holocaust and genocide education and awareness to be included in the social studies curriculum, Voices of Hope created the Holocaust and Genocide Education Advisory Committee and continues to work with experts and educators across Connecticut and the State Department of Education to provide curriculum and teacher training. Since then, we've reached over 12,000 students and educators. As we look towards the future, we look forward to being together again at our signature programs like International Holocaust Remembrance Day, reading of the names, the annual Holocaust commemoration, and Speak Up. At the same time, we will build on what we learned during the difficult time of this pandemic and will continue to offer many virtual programs, including speaker series, webinars, and our new online exhibit and curriculum of Connecticut Remembers the Holocaust. Though the pandemic produced many challenges and we very much miss being together in the same room, it also demonstrated our ability to work with people from all over the world and share their insights with a broader audience. As we move forward, we are excited by the possibilities to continue to build both. Our hope is through education and commemoration, we can teach tolerance and the value and importance of remembrance.
I worked for Voices of Hope. It was one of the greatest experiences throughout my high school career, and it completely changed my life. I interviewed a Holocaust survivor who I became very close with, Bea Israel, and she was recounting her family's time at Buchenwald and her late husband's time at Auschwitz and her experiences during Kristallnacht. And I think that's really important because I am of the next generation where living memory is fading, but since I've had these experiences, I can go into the world and relay the message to others. I spoke at the Capitol and I just told my story. But one of the senators who was opposed previously came to me after and he said, your testimony, the power of your words inspired me to see your story and to hear the importance of why we should pass this bill. And it was incredible to me at the time, being 18 years old, to know that I could use my voice to make a change in my local community, the state community, and it gave me hope for the future of what I can do if I set my mind to it.
We're trying to teach students to think about what it's like to walk in the shoes of another. Is that it gets students to think a little bit differently about how persecution and discrimination works.
My sister and I was 7 and my sister was 5. My father had about 3 or 4 pictures in his pocket. One of them was my kindergarten class. There's 27 kids and 2 teachers. I'm the only one that survived. Here I am, right over here. My grandparents, my aunts and uncles, everybody else was killed.
The survivors that are speaking to the students were mostly the students' ages, if not younger, when these things happen. And I can't imagine that the students don't relate to that more, or if they have younger siblings. Oftentimes the students that come through the museum, they've never really heard about the Holocaust before. One student was questioning, how could someone do this to another person? And one of the kids, who was pretty silent the entire time, said, look at the way we treat each other at school. Look at how we treat each other and what we say to each other and the nasty things that we do.
There are things happening in our world today, right? Atrocities and crimes and persecution and people being killed for who they are. So what is our responsibility to make sure that these kinds of things don't happen? How does this happen, right? How do we respond to hatred, discrimination, persecution? What are we supposed to do?
By being able to talk about bullying with those kids, then they saw this as something that maybe applied to them.
Dear Mrs. Lazowski, your story has changed me in ways I can't explain and has inspired me to be kinder to others and to never give up, even in the darkest of times.
Within the next decade, I think my grandchild will be the last generation that can actually speak to a Holocaust survivor, which is sad in many respects, but one big one is that the deniers will, all of a sudden, they won't have anybody to come up and say, it did happen.
Good evening. While this is an evening of hope and a reflection on the incredible work that we have accomplished this year, we need to share with you something that happened during our summer series just last month. We were interrupted by violent anti-Semitic images and words by at least 2 separate attackers. It began with an individual stating loudly, directly to our community, that the Holocaust never happened. After that, the attackers drew harsh images of swastikas and left hate-filled messages for the entire audience to see on their screens. These hateful messages and their targeted attack on us are precisely why the work of Voices of Hope is so important. We have grown into an organization that has been noticed by individuals outside of our state. In this case, our message reached the wrong individuals across this country who seek to do us harm. The rise in anti-Semitic attacks is real, and it literally came into each of our homes that night. One of our participants, a woman we did not know, was able to erase the attackers' messages as it happened again and again throughout the program. This is what Voices of Hope does every day. We work to erase hate, one student, one teacher, and one parent at a time. We did not think something like this would happen to us, but it did. Yet it has only strengthened our resolve to promote a culture of courage to stand up against hatred through Holocaust and genocide education and remembrance. We thank you for joining us tonight and for your continued support of our mission. Together, we can accomplish so much. We can and we will continue our work with pride. We will continue to educate, commemorate, and we promise to never forget.
This is your chance to help Voices of Hope achieve its mission and erase hate. We ask you now to make an additional donation which helps support education and commemoration when we need it most. Let's help Voices of Hope to prevent acts of hatred and pledge to make a difference. Text the word GIVE to 860-362-2646 to make your donation right now. That number is 860-362-2646. Tonight's goal is $10,000, so let's do our best to ensure Voices of Hope can continue its work in the future. We'll be keeping an eye on your donations throughout the evening, and we thank you in advance for your generous support. You think about art, music, and film that have served as methods to help us reach a deeper connection to the past, to history. They help us to express our thoughts and feelings, as well as helping others better understand what's important to us as individuals in a community. In our next presentation, we will see how art has the power to lift us up, give us courage, and empower us to speak up against hatred. Please welcome the creator and producer of the upcoming documentary, Won't Be Silent, Abe Gurko.
Good evening. My name is Abe Gurko, and I am honored to be part of the Voices of Hope event tonight. I want to thank Robin, Kathy, and Kimberly for so generously inviting me to share my passion project with you called Won't Be Silent. This is an extraordinary story of hope, which came to me like most miracles do, serendipitously. Remember when the Nazis were marching in Charlottesville? That life-changing moment coincided fortuitously receiving a note from the Holocaust Museum from Washington, D.C. I mean, listen to this. They found a piece of music attributed to my uncle Wolf Dramashkin that was written while he was in Kluga concentration camp in Estonia. It was a song of resistance to the Nazis. Sadly, he was killed hours before the liberation, and his song was silenced until it was found recently, printed in a book in Israel by a survivor who said, "This song became the mantra that I feel kept me alive." Imagine. When I heard that, I knew it was up to me to give my Uncle Wolf his long and well-deserved legacy, as well as a chance to tell his story. And when you think about it, until that moment, Wolf was just one of the 6 million anonymous Jews whose stories have not been told. Well, this is what brings me to you here tonight, and the project Won't Be Silent, which means the world to me. You will see in this short video tonight a little history about my uncle, but also the intention of which I want to take my uncle's song and bring it to the days where we need this most, a message of hope through music. But for now, I want to share my appreciation for the fact that Voices of Hope creates a culture of courage and teaches the next generation to stand up against hate through Holocaust and genocide education. That is so important, especially now as anti-Semitism is on the rise. With people like you and stories like my Uncle Wolf's, together we can resist the dark forces and say never again. Thank you.
Silent, not for one more day. We'll speak out so future generations will be saved. We won't close our eyes and fear and hide. We'll let our beauty reign. Nothing stands between us and the world we dream to know. We were made to love no matter how much hate we face. We will fight for those who cannot fight and need our strength. Won't close our eyes in fear and hide. We'll let our beauty reign. Nothing stands between us and the world we dream to know. We'll break the silence, screaming words of hope. Won't be silent, won't be silent. We'll break the silence, screaming words of hope. We won't be silent, won't be silent. We'll break the silence, screaming words of hope. Won't be silent, won't be silent. We'll break the silence. We're screaming words of hope. Won't be silent, won't be silent, won't be silent. We'll break the silence. Screaming words of hope. We'll break the silence, screaming words of
I just think that there's angels on earth, and I think they're all showing up for this one moment. There's all these people that are coming together for this extraordinary moment that you couldn't even write this. You can't tell this story until it happens, because you would not even imagine that to be the case.
It's really important that we're singing this song because a man who was killed in such a horrendous way gets to live on forever.
It's so inspiring to have music as a medium to connect to history and to connect to people's stories and narratives that would otherwise be lost.
Singing the song was extremely meaningful, and especially the words, screaming words of hope, because it conveys the message to everybody that they should be screaming out when there's hate.
We can make a change just by one of us standing up.
It's really important that people aren't afraid to talk.
That moment where there was a choice to be silent and just let it go on, or to take a risk.
We'll break the silence, break the silence, screaming words of hope.
How wonderful that young people sing the words, "Won't be silent." I will not be silent, and neither should you.
The story of Abe's Uncle Wolf and the passing down of his legacy is truly remarkable. There are so many touching stories of resilience that continue to come to light since the end of the Holocaust. Wolf's melody will certainly remain with all of us in the future. Now we turn to another individual who pledged to never be silent. Gisela Adamski is a local Holocaust survivor who has spent years speaking to students and educators about her experience during the Holocaust. Tonight she offers us a special message of hope and celebrates the work and mission of Voices of Hope.
Hello, my name is Gisela Sachs Adamski. I'm a 92-year-old Holocaust survivor. Years ago, my survivor friends and I talked amongst ourselves. We were worried that the Holocaust would be forgotten once we were gone. No one would remember. Yet I knew my daughter and second generation organizations were doing the work. Voices of Hope does a very important work of Holocaust education and commemoration. Voices of Hope gives me faith and strength to believe in a better future.
Thank you so much, Gisela. Our local survivors are such an enormous part of how Voices of Hope educates and commemorates. Their kindness and bravery always leave their audiences in awe. It's these stories that Voices of Hope strives to preserve and share with as many people as possible, but they need your support in order to do that. Remember, you can give right now by texting the word GIVE to the number 860-362-2646. Again, the number is 860-362-2646. We love seeing your donations rolling in, so please make sure to keep them coming. Those donations make you a part of this remarkable effort to educate our children, honor the memory of those who have perished, and share the testimony of our survivors so that we may never forget. One of the most remarkable things about Voices of Hope is its ability to reach students and educators on a deep and personal level. The programming available through the Hero Center can truly make a difference in classrooms across the state and beyond. Let's turn now to Hero Center Director Kimberly Bolero to learn a little bit more about the program, what your support can help accomplish, and the presentation of the Simon Conover Recognition for Excellence in Holocaust Teaching.
Good evening. My name is Kimberly Bolero, and I'm the director of the Hero Center, the Holocaust Education Resource and Outreach Center. This is a joint initiative between Voices of Hope and the Maurice Greenberg Center for Judaic Studies, established in 2018. The Hero Center is a program designed to assist educators in implementing Holocaust and genocide education content into their curriculum, as well as coordinate museum tours, presentations, and talks with Holocaust survivors for students. Each year, Voices of Hope recognizes 2 educators who have shown their passion for Holocaust education with the Simon Conover Recognition for Excellence in Holocaust Teaching. Simon, a Holocaust survivor himself, endured the unimaginable hardships of the Shoah and later made sure to live every day of his life to the fullest. minute to minute, not hour to hour. This year's recognition will be, as everything else is this year, different. Voices of Hope has continued to work with teachers and community partners to provide meaningful programming on virtual platforms. Tonight, in Simon Conover's honor, we offer our deepest gratitude to our heroes of 2020. This year's heroes include, first and foremost, Connecticut teachers who have done everything in their power to engage their students during these trying times. Not only did they transform their in-person lessons into virtual ones in a matter of days, but they went above and beyond to make sure their students had the resources they needed to get through the school year safely at home. So many educators continued to teach the lessons of the Holocaust and other genocides in their virtual classrooms, and their students are better for it. We must also recognize and thank our local survivors for their continued engagement with student and community groups. Many of our survivors provided recorded statements to give all of us a little hope and perspective when we needed it most. They also participated in virtual talks and presentations to make sure that their audiences never forget the hardships that so many faced. We are also grateful to the Holocaust and Genocide Education Advisory Committee for working with us to present successful spring webinars and virtual summer workshops for teachers. We recognize the children of survivors who served as museum docents and spoke in schools, having to then adapt their presentations for online learning. Furthermore, we thank our first cohort of our Passing the Torch, the Responsibility of Descendants mini course. This course is designed to help descendants of survivors create their own stories through that of their families, allowing them to speak in schools and pass on this important history. Finally, we would like to thank the Voices of Hope Board of Directors, who worked tirelessly to help us transform our annual Yom HaShoah and reading of the names commemorations into meaningful virtual programs. Not only that, they were leaders in designing a phenomenal 8-week virtual summer speaker series, which allowed us to host speakers from around the world and reach communities outside Connecticut. There is so much in store for Voices of Hope and the Hero Center. Until we can safely visit schools again, we want to ensure that we offer effective and engaging Holocaust and genocide education programming online. This fall, we will be launching the Connecticut Remembers the Holocaust website with the Greenberg Center for Judaic Studies. This website includes local survivor testimony and curricula based on the lessons of each survivor's experience. The virtual exhibit is based on the physical one housed at the Museum of Jewish Civilization at the University of Hartford. Our deepest thanks go to our team of educators and specialists who have made this project possible. There are so many of you who are doing your best to make sure future generations never forget. Thank you for all of your efforts and for supporting Voices of Hope and the Hero Center. From the bottom of our hearts, thank you to all of our heroes of 2020.
Voices of Hope and its Hero Center program have so much to offer our schools and our communities. Their commemorative and educational programming transcends traditional learning and allows each of us the opportunity to make the world a better place. When we speak of changing the world for the better and honoring traditions, we must also speak of L'Dor Vador and the annual award given by Voices of Hope. L'Dor Vador means from generation to generation, and this year's award has been granted to an incredibly deserving individual for her years of service to so many organizations and causes. Gail Temkin is well known in our community for a variety of reasons, but tonight we celebrate her tremendous kindness and commitment to passing down the lessons her parents taught her to her own children and instilling in them a sense of compassion and love. Gail's father, Avi Weiner, of blessed memory, was a Holocaust survivor who spoke to thousands of students over the years about his experience. He encouraged them to stand up and speak out against injustice, as well as to help those in need and treat others with dignity. Gail has carried out these lessons and carried them with her. We now want to give her family, friends, all of them a chance to express what they've learned from her over the years.
This collection is a tradition that I started when I was liberated. Was April 11th. Our daughter and my son, they took over and they present me with a gift of a cup.
My girls are intimately connected with their grandfather, who's a survivor. We present him with a kiddish cup. This is his cup for this year.
I believe, and this is one of the major ideas I try and share with my students, that we're all heroes in waiting, just waiting for the opportunity to demonstrate our courage. Abby translated to his children the message that you are a hero and do not wait, that the time to act is now. If something doesn't work, try something else, but act. When I think about the mission of Voices of Hope, when I think about the vision that Voices of Hope has, Gail, through Abby, maintains that the lifeblood of an organization like this. Gail is the reflection of the lifeblood of this organization. It is the message of Abby saying, you must act, you must protect, you must be an upstander.
Whatever our children will get out of it will be a benefit for them and for society.
He saw firsthand what happens when people are apathetic. So Gail has absorbed the life spirit of her dad. I know that she's intimately involved with Solomon Schechter. I know she's intimately involved with Voices of Hope. I know that she's very much involved with the JCC. I know that she's involved with UConn from a medical point of view. If you just take those four things and you think about the overarching impact that those four organizations have on this community, and even beyond the community, UConn especially, this is an extraordinary record of accomplishments in a very short time. I mean, Gail is a young woman. I can't even begin to imagine what she will accomplish moving forward. What is left for her to do, it will be astounding. Gail has absorbed all of Abby's qualities, his belief in that we can make a difference, that we must make a difference. She is the epitome, the living reflection of her dad. And there is no higher honor than one can have than being the reflection of Abby Weiner.
So something that my mom and Poppy taught me about the world and like our responsibilities is definitely being grateful for what we have and like not judging others and like looking back at our history and just being thankful for the life we live. And also just like being kind and care and like being caring for others, as like we don't really know what they've been through in their background. So just like being treating others how we want to be treated, not like judging people based off like anything whatsoever.
Another thing is to be open-minded when meeting new people and having new opportunities, because you never know what that can lead to.
For sure. So during quarantine, Lily and I, we wrote letters to Holocaust survivors during the time of Passover. So like Passover letters, especially during quarantine, just like letting others know we're there for them. So I think it's really important, especially during a time of quarantine isolation where like you can't really see other people and like
some people like may not really have family with them, and just like reaching out and letting others know you're there for them and you care for them is like really important thing to do, and just like others know that you're willing to listen to them, and just like knowing that they have someone who they can reach out to. And I think that's really important, especially during a time like now in our world. Also, like what Alyssa was saying, like it's nice that they can have that person that they know they can reach out to. Also, I've been keeping in touch with some of the people so they have someone to talk to if they are not with family, or if they're self-isolating alone with nobody else, then they know that they have some people that they can go to. Oh, love you, Mom. Thanks for being the best mom.
Congratulations, Galen. Thank you for all that you do for our community. Now we are joined by Gail herself, her brother, Howard Weiner, and Alicia Wiesel, former CIO of Goldman Sachs and son of the late human rights activist and Holocaust survivor, Elie Wiesel. Many of us know Alicia's father as the author of the acclaimed memoir, Night. Alicia is here live tonight to speak with Gail and Howard about the legacies of their fathers who grew up in the same town in Romania and who were deported from their homes on the very same transport. We are pleased to welcome you all, Alicia, Gail, and Howard.
Thank you, Brad. With heartfelt thanks, I humbly accept the Voices of Hope Lador Vador Award. Voices of Hope is an extraordinary organization whose mission is to promote a culture of courage, to stand up against hatred through Holocaust and genocide education and remembrance. To me, Lador Vador means the passing on of generational wisdom and sensibilities, and honoring the stories of those who came before us while adhering to our beliefs and integrity. We learn from the past in order to create a future. It is a promise to educate future generations. It is a part of who I am. My father suffered through some terrible atrocities during the Holocaust. He lost both of his parents and lived through very difficult and horrifying conditions in the concentration camps. But even so, he chose to live his life with meaning and purpose. He told his story to give voice to those who never had a chance, and devoted his life to fulfilling the promise of never again for all future victims of genocide. He went to many schools and organizations to tell his story, not for sympathy, but rather so all people could help ensure that this would never happen again. I truly believe that I was given the honor of being a second-generation Holocaust survivor to secure my father's legacy. His story, as well as all the stories, must continue to be told and must continue to be heard. I do this for the past, present, and future, for the purpose of sustaining the customs, heritage, and collective memory. I remember my father always telling me that his father was his greatest teacher. Lador Vador. My parents have been my greatest teachers. They taught me the value of human kindness, human decency, and dignity. I know my father is here with us this evening. He would be so proud of the work we do at Voices of Hope. He has given me the strength and encouragement to believe in our future, even when the world we live in today might make us question that. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel said, "The authentic individual is neither an end nor a beginning, but a link between the ages, both memory and expectations. To us, recollection is a holy act. We sanctify the present by remembering the past. To us, Jews, the essence of faith is memory. To believe is to remember." I would like to congratulate all the educators who are being recognized tonight, and extend a special thank you to those educators who have taught Alyssa and Lily. The work you all do is so critical to the memory of the past, the present, and the future. Your words carry the message to our future generations so that we will hopefully never see genocide, human injustice, and persecution again. I'd like to take a moment to recognize some very important people this evening. Kathy, Robin, and Kim, you are outstanding professionals who carry the mission of Voices of Hope with you in all that you do. Peter, it is my honor to serve on the Voices of Hope board with you and all the other members of the board. I had originally joined the board with my father, and it has proven to be so meaningful and impactful on my life. Thank you to the Evening of Hope Committee for adapting to this crazy new world and for making tonight's event so meaningful. A special thank you to my mom, who, along with my dad, instilled the values and morals which I hold true today. I was lucky to grow up in a family that taught by example and not just by words. This has enabled me to pass that along to my beautiful daughters, Alyssa and Lily. Girls, if I can give you both one message today, it is to stand up for who you are, take a stand for what you believe in, and never ever forget where you came from. Steve, I am so blessed to be on this journey with you. You are my biggest cheerleader and the most giving person I know. A very special thank you to Howard and Barbara, my brother and sister-in-law, for coming all the way from Houston. Well, at least logging in for the program from Houston. Howard, I am really looking forward to us now having a conversation with Alicia Wiesel. Alicia, I'm so thrilled that you're here with us and look forward to the conversation we have ahead.
Gail, thank you for including me. I have to say, I didn't know much about Voices of Hope, but from the conversations I've had over the past few weeks, I'm deeply impressed by what this community has done and the values that you've shown yourselves to be committed to, which are so important at this time. And I applaud you all on your choice of Gail as a fantastic honoree tonight.
Thank you. Alicia, can you tell us a little bit about who you are, where you're from, a little history of yourself?
Yeah, I'll try to do 30 seconds or less. I was born in New York City, born and raised. My father was really convinced by three people, by his Talmud professor, Saul Lieberman, by the Lubavitcher Rebbe, and by my mother, to not turn his back on perpetuating Jewish life and having a Jewish family. And against a lot of decisions he'd previously made, he decided to have me in 1972. I think that was a very sort of existential and religious decision, among other things, for him, that spoke volumes about who he was. And, I was raised in the city. I, absorbed in an ambient way knowledge about the Shoah and the Holocaust, but resisted as much as possible, really getting, brought into it, because it was so overwhelming having a father who was so prominent in that world and going to an Orthodox yeshiva. I had all the more reason to try to just sort of put that to the side. But in life has a way of catching up, and much as I tried to get away from Yiddishkeit, when one has your own children, you discover all of a sudden how important continuity is. You discover that things you thought weren't so important may be the most important things of all. And now I'm very proud to have a family of my own. I have a 15-year-old and a 12-year-old. And I'd say that even though only one of them goes to a Jewish day school, the rhythm of the Jewish cycle is very much with us. So today I happen to particularly be feeling that we're in the middle of a Aseres Yemei Tshuva. And I don't know about the two of you, but I don't know if all my sins or fallacies or things that I do wrong just become more visible, or if I'm actually doing more things wrong these days. But it's always a very interesting time of the year.
Yeah, it seems like it puts into perspective a lot of things for so many of us coming through this time of the year. I want to talk a little bit about, without us even having known, the connection that we all have of our fathers having had when they were younger, and what a small world, and unfortunately even smaller it's getting as the survivors age out and unfortunately pass away.
I hear such incredible stories, and when you told me today that the numbers on our father's arms were only separated by 8, that kind of blew my mind. These were people who were in line together, who were exchanging information, as you shared with me, that my grandfather passed on what he had clearly heard only moments ago, which is lie about your age. Don't be too young, don't be too old. Think about what that does to someone, and the fact that our fathers came through this. I think not beaten, not defeated. It would have been, you think, so natural, so easy, that even if you miraculously survived the Shoah, to say, I'm done with Judaism. What do I need this for? I'm done with my people. Look what it got me. Look where it got me. But to come out of that with a commitment to Jewish life and Jewish values, so profound that both of our fathers did that. So I feel like even though they overlapped for a few years in the camps, it's really that journey that they took in the years afterwards that links them more profoundly, because not every survivor did that.
It's true.
Howard, it's nice to see Howard on here as well. We're so happy that your brother joined. I had the pleasure of meeting Howard recently because Howard and I shared a teacher in common back in yeshiva days who was quite insistent that we had to meet each other. So it's really been a great pleasure to get to know you, Howard, as well.
Yeah, I think first of all, before I say anything, I wanted to wish Gail a huge congratulations and a mazel tov on this well-deserved honor. She is truly a community leader. Everybody knows her, and the work that she does and sort of her selfless tenacity to continue the important work of Voices of Hope is really incredible, and she deserves this. And I would say that it's just incredible that here we are, all three of us together. I think it's kind of mind-blowing that the story goes back so far, and yet here we are, and that's the sort of the ultimate triumph that we get to carry on the tradition. I would say that what we learned from our dad, which I think was incredible, is that he came out of this with an incredible love of people and a love of humanity and a sense of kindness and generosity, which never really his experience never really tainted the kind of person he was. And I think that that was the lesson that I always took away, was that he was just somebody that everybody loved. And I think that's such an important lesson for us to take out of this experience, that the answer to the horror show is in fact kindness and connection to other humans. And he led the way in terms of being a social activist way before it was fashionable. And that example lives on in our entire family. So anyway, it's an honor to be here with Gail and with Alicia, and I hope that we continue this relationship as time goes on, because the weight, we feel the weight as we get older.
I have a question for the two of you. Either one of you can answer it, but Gail had mentioned to me obviously this morning that I knew your father had passed 2 years ago, and it sounds like both of you, as the children, were saying Kaddish every day for him. Can you comment at all on sort of what was that like, and where did your Kaddish take you?
Yeah, go ahead.
Sure. So I knew from the start that I wanted to take on that responsibility. And that as his daughter, that it was something that I owed to him, and that I owed to everyone whose life was embodied from having touched him at all. And I started it, and going through Shiva, it became a process that I started to understand as the days went by. And then as I started going to services and saying Kaddish, 3 times a day, and really owning it, it became something that was so ingrained in me. I felt like I couldn't not do it. It was something so deep inside me, and it was my time to connect with the loss of him, but also as time went by to connect with him, and to really understand why things were so important to him, and just this one prayer or this one moment had such an impact on who I am, and really made me miss him more, but made me appreciate him more, and made me respect the process of why we have to say, or why we should say Kaddish for the year. There was a moment in synagogue right before my dad had passed away. There were times when we would be there, and there were stained glass windows that would shine in, and every day the same time, until the clocks would change, there was a rainbow that was on the floor. And anytime I was in shul with my dad, he would point out the rainbow, and he said, "Don't ever forget the rainbow." He's like, "You can always see me. Don't ever forget the rainbow." And all of a sudden one day I was there, and it hadn't happened, and it was after Shloshim, and all of a sudden there was the rainbow. And I felt like it just gave me such an inner peace of the connection with my dad.
That's
Yeah,
terrific.
beautiful. I mean, I think that for me, it was obviously a connection and a tremendous gift, but it was very difficult. I think that, you know, ritual and consistency and, you know, be it in any area of life, but particularly in this kind of thing, which has so many meanings, really builds emotion. And I think that it's such a brilliant, like many things in Judaism, it's such a brilliant way to develop that emotional depth that you can't get, I think, superficially. For me, what was interesting was traveling the world, and you know, for work, I had to travel, and I always had to figure in how I was going to work this into the schedule. And I got to meet some really amazing people and experience Jewish communities, and reaffirm the notion that Jews are everywhere, and that Jewish tradition is consistent and pervasive, and that was very comforting.
When you're saying Kaddish, that's definitely when you realize that you have a Jewish passport that can take you into any shul. And, you know, I don't know how much of that you experienced, Gail, but I think, you know, I saw women even come to Orthodox services. And even if it wasn't, you know, the sort of thing where they'd be getting, you know, to daven for the Amud, I still saw that there was respect for women to come and say Kaddish, even if that wasn't necessarily the minhag or the custom. So it's clear that there's a passport across space. There's a passport, a Jewish passport across the different affiliations of Judaism. I said my Kaddish in so many different affiliations, and that there's also a passport in time. You know, you show up as a mourner, and here this space of the service has been carved out just for you. And if you're awkward or you don't know where it is, and you don't even know the beginning of that davening, like here's this place for you. So, you know, I'm spending a little bit of time on this because I know we don't have a lot of time in this conversation. And one thing that I really want to broadcast in terms of my father's identity, which I think is so linked with yours, is this decision that Jewish identity was at the core. And yes, you could choose to make one's life about Holocaust memory, but you have to think about what is it that was killed during the Holocaust. And these were the lives of Jews. These were observant, you know, Jews as well, who had such passion for this. And that to keep that alive is as radical a political statement as any protest you might show up to, as any cause you might lend your support to, any check you might write. Just the day in, day out act of raising Jewish children and attuning them to the Jewish calendar and making sure that they have knowledge. And if, you know, the way I think about it is, you know, if we sang just Shalom Aleichem around the dinner table on Friday night, I'm committed to also sing Eshes Chayil, you know, and then more Zemiros, that they, you know, my kids should have even more riches than I had after what my father had. Gail, how much more time do we have? Because I have another question, but I don't want to go too deep into it if we're going to get cut off midway.
I think we're good. We can go on for a little bit.
Okay. So the question I'd love to hear your thoughts on a little bit, because this is something I wrestle with a lot, is, you know, I see my father quoted all the time with his quote that says, you know, silence helps the oppressor and never the victim, so you should never be silent. And I think that in many ways that's become one of the most popular quotes about my father. And, you know, it's invoked often in a political context. Yet I look at my father and I look at how he acted not only on the world stage, you know, when he went and protested to Ronald Reagan, President Reagan, about his trip to Bitburg, he did so incredibly respectfully. He didn't, you know, lash out. You think about the modern day dialogue we have, the political dialogue in this country, and how quick we are to call people garbage or say, oh, that guy votes for him, I'm never going to talk to him again. You know, the division is so deep and the trust is so low, and we tend to think the worst of each other if we disagree on anything political. And I think about how my father treated President Reagan, how he agonized over how to deliver that message in the most respectful way possible. And imagine the hurt my father felt. He was such a patriot. Here, the president was going to a cemetery where SS officers were buried. He had every right to scream and yell obscenities and act with all the rage that, you know, has become popular these days, but he didn't. He acted with respect. And I think about my father and how the number one virtue that he broadcast in the home was Shalom Bayis. So it's funny because I think my father is so equated with you can't be silent, but when I think about some of his greatest moral victories in the world, both within the small circle of family affairs and the larger one on the world stage, he actually kind of did know when to be quiet or how to be quiet or how to do something respectfully, how to not give in to rage and say, ah, see, I'm not being silent. I'm saying everything that's on my mind, blah, blah, blah. I hate you, blah, blah, blah. Like, so I wrestle a lot with that. And I'm curious whether or not, you saw that at all in your family dynamic. How did your father deal with it? What are your views? And what's your guidance for me as I struggle through that question about, is never being silent a virtue, or is being silent a virtue?
Howard, do you want to?
Well, I mean, I think that's a really fascinating observation. I think that I'm sure it was the case with your dad, and certainly with my dad, and men of that era and generation and background. There was a certain elegance with which they carried themselves, and they were able to make, at least my dad was able to make his points in a forceful way, but in a respectful way. I always think about how my dad talked to physicians or rabbis or people that he held in high esteem. He was so close with his physicians. There was a certain deference and a certain elegance with the way he carried himself. And I think that sadly, as you mentioned, I mean, that's pretty much lost now in the modern dialogue, debate and dialogue. And it's something that we need to reclaim and learn from that generation. So I think that one can be not silent and yet not, offensive at the same time. I don't know. Gail, what do you think?
Yeah, I completely agree. He had a way about him that you heard him, even if it was on a much quieter level. He was gentle, but got his message across. Although I have to say, as the years went by and as politics came to a forefront in the more recent years, he was very vocal, and he really, made it a point to speak his voice, and really, I used to say that at this point in his life, it's his right to get angry and to speak up and to voice his opinion, even if it was just to the television. But I think that like Howard said, I think that there was a way of carrying yourself and of getting the message out, that you didn't have to go and scream it from the lampposts. You could really just earn the respect that you really deserve and get the message out.
Well, with the name of this organization being Voices of Hope and that keyword voice, it's my fervent wish for all of the listeners, for all of you who feel so passionate, that in the coming year, my bracha to you is that you should find, your articulate voice, the ability to refine what you want to say in ways that really make your listeners hear you, and not retreat into a counter position because the battle has ensued.
Alicia, thank you so much. I wish we could go on for hours, and like Howard said, I feel this connection now that I hope that our conversation can go on indefinitely, and that one day we'll be able to meet in person and really sit down and talk more and share more stories. We're so grateful for you being here this evening. Howard, thank you for being part of this with me. I really feel like that's all part of the Dor Vador, having you by my side, and I really appreciate it. And thank you. We hope everyone enjoyed this evening's conversation. And now I'd like to turn it back to Brad to continue with the program.
And Gemar Chatima Tova to all of our listeners.
Thank you.
To Alicia for taking the time to be a part of this important and unique event. We thank all of you for sharing the legacies of your fathers and for embodying and continuing the lessons they themselves shared with the world. As you've seen tonight, Voices of Hope is a special organization that brings so much good into the world. They're helping our children to become more responsible, empathetic, and compassionate, people who will have the tools to make a difference. They're sharing the history in a way that is memorable and relevant while training the next generation to carry on that tradition. Voices of Hope's work will not stop here, but they need your help in order to continue this important work. This brings us to the close of our program, and we thank you for joining us to celebrate so many accomplishments, but we want to remind you that the work of Voices of Hope is not finished. There is so much more to do, and that is why your donations are so important. Remember, your support is needed to provide high quality and meaningful programs like tonight's Evening of Hope. We are about halfway to our goal for the evening, so if you have not already, please make a donation right now to Voices of Hope by texting the word GIVE to the following number, 860-362-2646. Thank you to the Voices of Hope staff and board for making tonight possible, as well as all of our dedicated sponsors. Also, many thanks to Jeff Ross of Real Video Group for tonight's production, Neil Sansone of Lasting Image, and the many individuals who volunteered their time and voices to this important event. Thanks to everyone who supported the Voices of Hope ad book this year. A link to that book can be found at our website, and it will also be mailed to all participants. To close out our program tonight, we welcome the children of Holocaust survivors to recite the Second Generation Pledge. Stay safe and healthy. Thanks again, and good night.
We are the first generation born after the darkness. Through our parents' memories, words, and silence, we are linked to that annihilated Jewish existence whose echoes permeate our consciousness.
We dedicate this pledge to you, our parents, who suffered and survived, to our grandparents who perished in the flames, to our vanished brothers and sisters, more than 1 million Jewish children so brutally murdered.
To all 6 million whose unyielding spiritual and physical resistance, even in the camps and ghettos, exemplifies our people's commitment to life.
We pledge to remember.
We pledge to remember.
We shall teach our children to preserve forever that uprooted Jewish spirit which could not be destroyed.
We shall tell the world of the depths to which humanity can sink and the heights which were attained even in hell itself.
We shall fight anti-Semitism and all forms of racial hatred by our dedication to freedom throughout the world.
We affirm our commitment to the State of Israel and to the furtherance of Jewish life in our homeland.
We pledge ourselves to the oneness of the Jewish people. We are your children. We are here. Wir sind du.